Today, I'm reading Chapter 11 of Anastasia, which is Book 1 of the Ringing Cedars series, written by Vladimir Megré. Chapter 11 is called Advice from Anastasia, the Seed as Physician. Anastasia has stated, every seed you plant contains within itself an enormous amount of information about the universe. Nothing made by human hands can compare with this information either in size or accuracy. Through the help of these data, the seed knows the exact time, down to the millisecond, when it is to come alive, to grow, what juices it is to take from the earth, how to make use of the rays of the celestial bodies, the sun, moon, and stars, and it is to grow into what fruit to bring forth. These fruits are designed to sustain man's life. More powerfully and effectively than any manufactured drugs of the present or future, these fruits are capable of counteracting and withstanding any disease of the human body. But to this end, the seed must know about the human condition, so that during the maturation process, it can satiate its fruits with the right correlation of substances to heal a specific individual of his disease, if indeed he has it or is prone to it. In order for the seed of a cucumber, tomato, or any other plant grown in one's plot to have such information, the following steps are necessary. Before planting, put into your mouth one or more little seeds. Hold them in your mouth under the tongue for at least 9 minutes. Then place the seed between the palms of your hands and hold it there for about 30 seconds. During this time, it is important that you be standing barefoot on the spot of earth where you will later be planting it. Open your hands and carefully raise the seed which you are holding to your mouth. Then blow on it lightly, warming it with your breath, and the wee little seed will know everything that is within you. Then you need to hold it with your hands. Open another 30 seconds, presenting the seed to the celestial bodies, and the seed will determine the moment of its awakening. The planets will all help it, and they will give the sprouts the light they need to produce fruit especially for you. After that, you may plant the seed in the ground. In no case should you water it right off, so as not to wash away the saliva which is now covering it, along with other information about you that the seed will take in. It can be watched 3 days after planting. The planting must be done on days appropriate to each vegetable. People already know this from the lunar calendar. In the absence of watering, a premature plant is not as harmful as an overdue planting. It is not a good idea to pull up all the weeds growing in the vicinity of the sprouts. At least one of each kind should be left in place. The weeds can be cut back. According to Anastasia, the seed is thus able to take in information about the person who plants it, and then, during the cultivation of its fruit, it will pick up from the universe and the earth the maximum amount of energies needed for a given individual. There is a side note here that says, please note that store-bought seeds available in America and elsewhere in the civilized world are often coated with rat poison for ease of storage and should never be used for planting in the way recommended here. If you wish to follow the planting advice set forth herein, be sure to use your own seed or procure organic seeds from a reputable producer, available from many online and mail-order vendors or through health food stores. The weeds should not be disposed of completely, as they have their own appointed function. Some weeds serve to protect the plant from disease, while others give supplemental information. During the cultivation time, it is vital to communicate with the plant, and it is desirable to approach it and touch it during a full moon at least once during its growth period. Anastasia maintains that the fruit cultivated from the seed in this manner, and consumed by the individual who cultivated it, is capable not only of curing him of all diseases of the flesh whatsoever, but also of significantly retarding the aging process, rescuing him from harmful habits, tremendously increasing his mental abilities, and giving him a sense of inner peace. The fruit will have the most effective influence when consumed no later than 3 days after harvesting. The above-mentioned step should be taken with a variety of plant species in the garden plot. It is not necessary to plant a whole bed of cucumbers, tomatoes, etc. In this manner, just a few plants each is enough. The fruit of plants grown like this will be distinguished from other plants of the same species not only in taste. If analyzed, it will be seen that they are also distinct in terms of the substances they contain. When planting the seedlings, it is important to soften the dirt in the excavated hole with one's fingers and bare toes, and spit into the hole. Responding to my question, why the feet, Anastasia explained that through perspiration from one's feet come substances, toxins no doubt, containing information about bodily diseases. This information is taken in by the seedlings. They transmit it to the fruit, which will thus be enabled to counteract diseases. Anastasia recommended walking around the plot barefoot from time to time. What kind of plants should one cultivate? Anastasia replied, "The same variety that exists in most garden plots is quite sufficient. Raspberries, currants, gooseberries, cucumbers, tomatoes, wild strawberries, any kind of apple tree. Sweet or sour cherries and flowers would be very good too. It does not make any difference how many plants of each kind there are or how big their area of cultivation is. There are a few definites without which it would be difficult to imagine a full energy microclimate. One of them is sunflowers, at least one plant. There should also be 1.5 or 2 square meters of cereal grains, rye or wheat, for example, and be sure to leave an island of at least 2 square meters for wild growing herbs, ones that are not planted manually. If you have not left any of them growing around your dacha, you can bring in some turf from the forest and thereby create an island of natural growth. I asked Anastasia if it were necessary to plant these definites directly into the plot if there were already some wild growing herbs close by, say just beyond the fence, and this is how she responded. It is not just the variety of plants that is significant, but also how they are planted, the direct communication with them that allows them to take in the information they need. I have already told you about one of the methods of planting. That is the basic one. It is essential to infuse the little patch of nature surrounding you with information about yourself. Only then will the healing effect of the life-giving support of your body be significantly higher than from the fruit alone. Out in the natural wilds, as you call them, and nature really is not wild, it is just unfamiliar to you. There are a great many plants that can help us cure all, and I mean all, existing diseases. These plants have been designed for that purpose, but man has lost or almost lost the ability to identify them. I told Anastasia that we already have many specialized pharmacies which deal in healing herbs, just as there are many physicians and medicine men who make a profession out of herb treatments, and she replied, "The chief physician is your own body. Right from the start, it was endowed with the ability to know which herb should be used and when, how to eat and breathe. It is capable of warding off disease even before its outward manifestation, and nobody else can replace your body, for this is your personal physician given individually to you by God, and personal only to you. I am telling you how to provide it with the opportunity to act beneficially on your behalf. If you make connections with the plants in your garden plot, they will take care of you and cure you. They will make the right diagnosis all by themselves and prepare the most effective medicine especially designed for you." Who gets stung by bees? In every garden plot, there should be at least one colony of bees. I told Anastasia there are very few people in our society who can communicate with bees. Special training is required and not everyone is successful. But she replied, "A lot of what you do to maintain bee colonies just gets in the way. Over the past millennia, there have been only 2 people on Earth who have come close to understanding this unique life form. And who might they be? They are 2 monks who have since been canonized. You can read about them in your books. They can be found in many monastery archives." "Come on now, Anastasia, you read church literature too? Where? When? You don't even have a single book." "I have at my disposal a much more complete method of retrieving information." "What kind of method?" "Again, you're talking in circles. After all, you promised me you wouldn't resort to any mysticism or fantasy." "I shall tell you about it. I shall even try teaching it to you. You will not understand it right away, but it is simple and natural." "Well, okay, so how should bees be kept in a garden plot?" "All you have to do is build the same kind of hive for them they would have under natural conditions, and that is it. After that, your only task remaining is to go to the hive and gather part of the honey, wax, and other substances they produce that are so useful for man." "Anastasia, that's not simple at all. Who knows what that natural hive should look like? Now, if you could tell me how to do it myself with the materials we have at our disposal, then that might be something feasible." "All right," she laughed. "Then you will have to wait a bit. I need to visualize it. I have to see what people in today's world might have on hand, as you say." "And where should it be placed so as not to spoil the view?" I added. "I shall look into that too." She lay down on the grass as she always did, visualizing her, or rather our, life situations, but this time I began to observe her carefully. As she lay on the grass, her arms were stretched out in different directions, with palms upturned. Her fingers were partly curled, and their tips, specifically the tips of the 4 fingers on each hand, were also positioned so that their soft parts faced upward. Her fingers first began to stir a little, but then stopped. Her eyes were closed. Her body was completely relaxed. Her face, too, appeared relaxed at first, but then a faint shadow of some kind of feeling or sensation moved across it. Later she explained how seeing at a distance could be practiced by anyone with a particular kind of upbringing. About the beehive, Anastasia had the following to say. "You need to make the hive in the shape of a hollow block. You can either take a log with a hole in it and hollow it out to enlarge the cavity, or use boards from a deciduous tree to make a long hollow box 120 centimeters long. The boards should be no less than 6 centimeters thick, and the inside measurements of the cavity at least 40 by 40 centimeters. Triangular strips should be inserted into the corners where the inner surfaces meet to make the cavity somewhat rounded. The strips can be just slightly glued in place, and the bees themselves will firm them up afterwards. One end should be fully and permanently covered with a board of the same thickness, with a removable panel at the other end. For this, the panel needs to be cut in such a way so that it fits nearly into the opening and sealed with grass or some kind of cloth covering the whole bottom. Make a slit or a series of slits to provide access for the bees. Along the bottom edge of one of the sides approximately 1.5 centimeters wide, starting 30 centimeters from the removable panel and continuing to the other end. This hive can be set on pilings anywhere in the garden plot, at least 20 to 25 centimeters off the ground, with the slits facing south. It is even better, however, to set it up under the roof of the house. Then people will not interfere with the bees flying out and will not be bothered by them. In this case, the hive should be aligned horizontally at a 20 to 30 degree angle, with the opening at the lower end. The hive could even be installed in the attic, provided there is proper ventilation, or on the roof itself. Best of all, though, attach it to the south wall of the house, just under the eaves. The only thing is, you need to make sure you have proper access to the hive so you can remove the honeycomb. Otherwise, the hive should stand on a small platform with an overhead canopy to protect it from the sun and can be wrapped with insulation in winter. I remarked to Anastasia that this type of hive could be rather heavy and the platform and canopy might spoil the appearance of the house. What to do in that case? She looked at me, little surprised, and then explained. The thing is that your beekeepers do not really go about it the right way. My grandfather told me about this. Beekeepers today have concocted a lot of different ways of constructing a hive, but all of them involve constant human intervention in its operation. They move the honeycomb farmers around within the hive, or move both the hive and the bees to a different spot for the winter, and that is something they should not do. Bees build their honeycombs at a specific distance apart to facilitate both ventilation and defense against their enemies, and any human intervention breaks down this system. Instead of spending their time gathering honey and raising offspring, the bees are obliged to fix what has been broken. Under natural conditions, bees live in tree hollows and cope with any situation perfectly well on their own. I told you how to keep them under conditions as close as their natural ones as possible. Their presence is extremely beneficial. They pollinate all the plants much more effectively than anything else, thereby increasing the yield. But you must know this pretty well already. What you may not know is that bees' proboscis open up channels in the plants through which the plants take in supplemental information reflected by the planets, information the plants and subsequently human beings require. But bees sting people, don't you see? How can somebody get a good rest in a dacha if they're constantly afraid of being stung? Bees only sting when people act aggressively toward them, wave them off, become afraid or irritated inside. Not necessarily at the bees, but just at anyone. The bees feel this and will not tolerate the rays of any dark feelings. Besides, they may attack those parts of the body where there are channels connecting with some diseased internal organ or where the protective aura has been torn, and so forth. You know how effectively bees are already used in treating the disease you call radiculitis, but that is far from being the only thing they can do. If I were to tell you about everything, especially showing the evidence you are asking for, you would have to spend not just 3 days but many weeks with me. There is a lot written about bees in your world. All I have done is introduce a few correctives. But please believe me, they are extremely important correctives. To establish a colony of bees in a hive like that is very easy. Before dumping a swarm of bees into the hive, put in a little chunk of wax and some honey plant. You do not need to put in any handmade frames or cells. Afterward, when there are colonies established or even a few neighboring dacha plots, the bees will multiply all by themselves. Then as they swarm, they will occupy the empty hives. And how should the honey be gathered? Open the panel, break off the hanging honeycomb, and retrieve the seal honey and pollen. Only do not be greedy. It is important to leave part of it for the bees for the winter. In fact, it is better not to collect any honey at all during the first year. Hello, morning. Anastasia has adapted her morning routine to the conditions of the dacha plot. In the morning, preferably at sunrise, walk out to the garden plot barefoot and approach any plants you like. You can touch them. This does not have to be done in accord with some of the schedule or ritual to be strictly followed day after day, but simply as one feels moved, or as one desires. But it should be done before washing. Then the plants will sense the odors of the substances emitted by the body through the pores of the skin during sleep. If it is warm and there is a small grassy patch close by, and it would be helpful if there were, lie down there and stretch out for 3 or 4 minutes. And if some little bug should happen to crawl onto your body during this time, do not chase it away. Many bugs open up pores on the human body and cleanse them. As a rule, the pores prone to clogging are the ones through which toxins are expelled, thus bringing all sorts of internal ailments to the surface and allowing the person to wash them away. If there is any pond water on the plot, you should immerse yourself in it. If not, then you can pour water over yourself as you stand barefoot close to the plants in garden beds, or even better, between the beds, or, for example, one morning alongside the raspberry bushes, the next by the currant bushes, etc. And after washing, you should not dry off right away. You should shake off the water drops from your hands, spreading them into the surrounding plants, and use your hands to brush off the water from other plants, from other parts of your body. After this, you can go through the usual procedures of washing and using any conveniences to which you are accustomed. Evening routine. In the evening before going to bed, it is important to wash your feet, using water with the addition of a small quantity, a few drops, of juice from saltbush or nettles, or the two together, but no soap or shampoo. After washing your feet, pour the water onto the garden beds. Then, if necessary, you can still wash your feet with soap. This evening routine is important for two reasons. As the feet perspire, toxins come to the surface, removing internal diseases from the body, and these must be washed away to cleanse the pores. Juices from the saltbush or nettles are good at facilitating this process. In pouring the remaining water onto the beds, you are giving supplemental information to the microorganisms and plants about your current state of well-being. This is very important too. Only after receiving this information can our visible and invisible world around you work out and pick up from the universe and the earth everything it needs for the normal functioning of your body. It will prepare everything by itself. I was still interested in knowing what Anastasia had to say about food. After all, she has a rather unique dietary regime, and so I asked, Anastasia, tell me how you think a person should feed himself. What should he eat? How often during the day? And in what amounts? Our world pays a great deal of attention to this question. There's a huge quantity of all sorts of literature on this subject. Health foods, recipes, advice on losing weight. It is difficult to picture man's lifestyle any other way under the circumstances currently imposed by the technocratic world. The dark forces are constantly trying desperately to take the natural mechanism of this world, the one given to humanity right from the start, and substitute their own cumbersome artificial system which goes against human nature. I asked Anastasia to put it in more concrete and understandable terms, without her philosophical musings, and she continued. You know, these questions of yours, as to what, when, and how much a person should eat, they are best answered by the individual's own body. The sensations of hunger and thirst are designed to send a signal to each particular individual indicating when he should take in food. This precise moment is the right one for each person. The world of technocracy being incapable of affording each individual the opportunity of satisfying his hunger and thirst at the moment desired by his body, has tried to force him into its own schedule based on nothing but his world's own helplessness, and then attempted to justify this compulsion in the name of some sort of efficiency. Just think, one person spends half the day sitting down, expending hardly any energy, while another exerts himself with some kind of physical labor, or simply runs and perspires all over, thereby using up many times more energy, and yet both are expected to eat at exactly the same time. A man should take in food at the moment advised by his body, and there can be no other advisor. I realize that under your world's condition, this is practically impossible, but the opportunity does exist for people at their dacas with their attached garden plots, and they should take advantage of it and forget about their unnatural artificial regimes. The same applies to your second question. What should one eat? The answer is, whatever is available at the moment, whatever is on hand, so to speak. The body itself will select what it needs. I could offer you a bit of non-traditional advice. If you have a household pet like a cat or a dog, keep track of its movements carefully. Occasionally, it will find something in the way of grasses or herbs and eat it. You should tear off a few samples of whatever it selects and add it to your diet. This is not something you have to do every day. Once or twice a week is sufficient. You should also take it upon yourself to gather some cereal grain, thresh it, grind it into flour, and then use the flour to bake bread. This is extremely important. Anyone consuming this bread even once or twice a year will build up a store of energy capable of awakening his inner spiritual powers, not only calming his soul, but also exerting a beneficial influence on his physical condition. This bread can be shared with relatives and close friends. If shared with serenity and love, it will have quite a beneficial influence on them as well. It is very helpful to every individual's health to spend 3 days at least once each summer eating only what is grown in his garden plot, along with bread, sunflower oil, and just a pinch of salt. I have already described Anastasia's own eating habits. While she was telling me all this, she would unwittingly tear off a blade of grass or two, put it in her mouth and chew it, and offer me some too. I decided to give it a try. I can't say the taste was anything to write home about, but neither did it provoke any sense of distaste. It seems as though Anastasia has left the whole task of nourishment and life support up to nature. She never allows it to interrupt her train of thought, which is always busy with some more important issue. Even so, her health is as remarkable as her outward beauty, of which it is an inseparable part. According to Anastasia, anyone who has established such a relationship with the earth and the plants on his own plot of land has the opportunity of ridding his body of absolutely every kind of disease. Disease, per se, is the result of man distancing himself from the natural system designed to take care of his health and life support. For such systems, the task of counteracting any disease presents no problem whatsoever, since this is their whole reason for being. However, the benefits experienced by people who have set up such information exchange contacts with the little patch of the natural world go far beyond dealing with disease.